Done before once or twice is Heidegger, and I'm going to try and get an idea across to you. In fact, two ideas and a problem. Okay, and they're ideas from Heidegger's Springtime, kind of. And I always read Being in Time in springtime, so I've gone back to reading Being in Time, and it made me think how powerful the idea of being is. You see, Heidegger starts with a crazy concept. He says most of philosophy has been about the self. We've been trying to understand how we see, how we understand the world, why we should be moral. But that isn't actually how we are. Isn't it the case, he starts off, that actually, the very moment we perceive the world, we know we exist. So that we exist and the world exists in the same moment. Us in it, and it in us. So that we find it very difficult to put ourselves apart from it. And Heidegger has a name for it. He calls it being. And he says being is never properly understood, because we're always wanting to abstract, we're always wanting to pull out what is ours, when really we need to understand what we share with the world, what the world is giving with us. And so he writes one of the great books of philosophy, Being in Time. He never finishes it. He writes about 700 pages, and that was the first half of book one. He never manages to get any further. But in it, he has an incredible vision of time. Because he says, if I am, as I know I have being, I need to exist in time quite differently from how I understand it. You see, most understandings of time have been dominated by the clock, a tick-tock, and it's all about the now it is, and the past and the future that are gone. But that's rubbish. If I really exist, I need to inhabit time quite differently. And here is one of the most original ideas you'll ever come across, because Heidegger imposes a total asymmetry in time. On the one hand, he'll say there's the past. Now, the past aren't things that are forgotten. They're not even, strictly speaking, your memory, or your memory is an example of it. They are the things you must already be to experience them. The always already. The having been. So it's not just your memory, it's not just your mood, it's not just your body, it's the fabric of a building, it's your culture. It's everything you can only understand as already there. But then he says, and where do we start to understand the having been? It clearly can't start with us. Does it start with our parents and what they gave us? But what about what was given to them? And so it is. The past stretches back, all the way back through history, to the very start of being. But what about the future, Heidegger says? How much of the future can you claim for your own? I mean, really claim, as you are. 20 years? 50 years? Not much more. So that you stand in a crazy, lopsided time. On one side, all of human history up to this point. On the other side, your death. And your death creates an absolute limit, an impossibility that is possible, that must happen, that makes you an individual, that calls you, Heidegger says, to act. Because only in acting can you ensure that you'll have any sort of survival as being enter into human history. And here Heidegger betrays himself, because he wants to say, we can act in the Augenblick, he wants to say, we can act to make human history palpable and real, to control our posterity. And remember when Being in Time is written, and where it is written. 1928, Germany. He writes it 2 years before joining National Socialist Party, just at the moment he went from the level of idiocy to absolute evil. And he spends the rest of his life trying to live it down. And yet, in Being in Time, you can see the argument. He wants to control human history. And yet, once you distance yourself from that, Being in Time leaves you with an incredible problem. And a real one. And the one that Heidegger is probably the first really to pinpoint. As I am, what debt do I owe the future? What debt do I owe a posterity beyond my existence? Do I owe it a debt? And if I don't, what price morality? It is that problem that besets our age. And if there are any other ages, will beset them. And I think, and I'll just finish up with this point, it is that point you have to understand the millenarian, the messianic favour of our time. Because one answer to that problem is to say, it's not us that's finite. It's the planet, it's the world, and that somehow we're caught up in its death, and therefore we must choose to act, like being chooses to act, like individuality chooses to act. And so, in so many ways, we try to reinvent Heidegger once again, for good or for ill.